The White Death, how a Cold War grudge turned an Arctic station into a frozen tomb. Arctic Circle, 82 degrees N, 1,978. The temperature was negative 52 degrees Celsius. The wind howled at 120 kilometers per hour. A constant, shrieking wall of ice that buried everything in a featureless shroud of white. There were 8 of them, trapped in a cluster of insulated prefabs, 600 kilometers from the nearest human settlement. They were the crew of Station Polaris, a joint international research outpost established during the brief thaw of détente. Their mission was to drill into the ancient ice sheet, extracting climate data from the dawn of civilization. But as the blizzard raged for its 3rd day, the drilling had stopped. The radio was dead. And the body of Dr. Elias Thorne, the American glaciologist, was cooling in the generator shed. This is the story of the Polaris Incident, a forgotten chapter of the Cold War, where the battle wasn't fought with missiles or propaganda, but with ice axes, paranoia, and the terrifying silence of the polar night. Part I, the frozen oasis. Station Polaris was a fragile bubble of light and warmth in the most hostile environment on Earth. It was a marvel of engineering, a series of interconnected modules powered by a diesel generator, with its own water filtration system, and enough dried food to last for 6 months. The crew was a microcosm of the world's uneasy peace. There was Dr. Thorne, the boisterous American, Dr. Anya Petrova, the brilliant but stoic Soviet geophysicist, Lars and Ingrid, the Swedish couple who ran the logistics, a silent Japanese technician, a French doctor, a Canadian radio operator, and the station commander, a grim-faced Brit named Captain Miller. It was tense from day one. Ingrid would later recount in a deposition for the International Polar Institute. We were all scientists, yes, but we were also citizens of countries pointing nuclear weapons at each other. You couldn't just forget that over powdered eggs. The tension was palpable. Thorne and Petrova were openly hostile, clashing over everything from drill core analysis to the merits of their respective economic systems. But it was a manageable tension until the blizzard hit. Part 2. The First Blood. The blizzard descended on November 12, 1978. It was a whiteout storm, a meteorological monster that cut visibility to 0 and buried the station in meters of snow. The radio antenna on the roof was the first casualty, snapped in half by the wind. They were alone. The morning of the 3rd day, the generator sputtered and died. The lights went out. The heating fans fell silent. The temperature inside the modules began to plummet. Thorne volunteered to go to the generator shed. He bundled up in his extreme weather gear, took a flashlight and a wrench, and stepped out into the roaring white. He never came back. An hour later, Captain Miller and Lars went to find him. They found the shed door open, the wind whipping snow inside. The generator was intact, but a fuel line had been neatly, deliberately severed. Thorne was on the floor. His flashlight was broken. The wrench was still in his hand. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the back of the head. It wasn't the cold, Miller told the remaining crew, his voice tight. Someone killed him. Part 3. The Saboteur Among Us. The suspicion fell immediately, inevitably, on Anya Petrova. She was the Soviet. She was the one who had argued with Thorne. The Cold War narrative was a powerful script, and they were all playing their parts. Petrova was confined to her quarters. She protested her innocence, claiming she had been in the lab during the time of the murder. But there were no witnesses. The station was a maze of corridors and modules. Anyone could have slipped away. The remaining crew began to turn on each other. Paranoia was a more insidious poison than the cold. Who could you trust? The quiet Japanese technician, who was always fixing things. The French doctor who had access to the medical supplies. The Swedish couple who kept to themselves. The next 24 hours were a nightmare of suspicion. The generator was fixed, but the fuel was running low. The blizzard showed no sign of abating. Then, the second death happened. It was Lars. He was found in the radio room, a screwdriver in his chest. He had been trying to jury-rig a distress signal using the backup transmitter. This time, Petrova had an alibi. She was locked in her room. The remaining survivors looked at each other with a new, horrifying realization. The killer wasn't just a political enemy, they were a predator. Part 4. The Final Showdown. It was Ingrid who figured it out. Grief-stricken, she was going through Lars's notes. He had been suspicious, not of Petrova, but of the Canadian radio operator. A man named David Chen. Chen was a quiet man, always helpful, always in the background. But Lars had found discrepancies in the radio logs. Signals that were sent when they shouldn't have been, coded bursts that didn't match the scientific data. Ingrid brought her findings to Captain Miller. They confronted Chen in the mess hall. He was calmly drinking tea. He didn't deny it. In fact, he smiled. "I'm not a saboteur," he said, his voice calm. "I'm a cleaner." Chen was a deep-cover agent for a faction within Western intelligence that believed détente was a mistake. They wanted to ignite a conflict, to prove that cooperation with the Soviets was impossible. Sabotaging the mission, killing the American, and framing the Soviet scientist was the perfect plan. Thorne had caught him cutting the fuel line. Lars had caught him trying to send a mission failure signal. They had to be removed. The final confrontation was swift and brutal. Chen pulled a concealed pistol. Miller lunged for him. A shot rang out, shattering a window. The freezing wind howled into the mess hall. In the chaos, it was Petrova, the woman they had all suspected, who ended it. She had escaped her confinement and arrived in the mess hall with an ice axe from the lab. Chen died instantly. Epilogue. The frozen truth. The blizzard cleared 2 days later. A rescue plane arrived from Norway. The survivors were airlifted out. The official story was a tragic accident. A generator failure. A fire. A series of unfortunate events. The Cold War could not afford a story about intelligence agents murdering scientists in the Arctic. The truth was buried under the ice. Station Polaris was abandoned. It stands there still, a ghost ship in the frozen wasteland, its secrets preserved by the cold. The Polaris Incident is a chilling reminder that the most dangerous part of the Cold War wasn't the nuclear missiles in their silos, but the quiet, deadly paranoia that could turn a group of brilliant scientists into a pack of frightened animals fighting for survival at the end of the world.